Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create custom column side navigation for one pagers in Divi. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do here is to create a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here and click on add new. We are going to give this page a name. So we're just going to call this custom column side navigation and then click on use Divi builder. Now this layout is available for download. So I'll leave the link in the show notes below so you can go ahead and download that layout and use the exact images if you need to. All right, so with this, I'm going to build from scratch. And the first thing I'm going to do here is to close this and then go to my section settings. We're going to start by adding our background color. So we're going to set this to white, and then we're going to come over here to design, spacing, and we are going to set our padding to 0, both to the top and the bottom. So I've just entered 0 here to the top. I'm going to activate my chain, and now the same value is applied both to the top and the bottom. Next, we're going to add our column structure. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to click this plus button, and the column structure I'm going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to close this for now, go into my row settings, and the first thing I'm going to do here is to go into the design tab, and here is where we need to adjust our gutter width, our maximum width, and our height. So I'm going to click here on sizing. So the first thing here is to equalize column heights, and then over here use custom gutter width. We're going to activate it and make sure it's set to 3, and then I'm going to go on my maximum width here and set it to 100%, and I'm going to do the same with my width as well. And for my height, I'm going to set this at 100 VH. So what this does is it just takes up the size of my screen height wise, and also here on the width being set to 100% means my design will be edge to edge. Now it's time to go to our spacing and remove some padding. So I'm going to click here on spacing and set my padding to 0, both to the top and the bottom. Now let's head over to the column settings. So I'm just going to save this, or in fact, let me just go back in. So over here on the column structure, I'm going to start with the first one by clicking here on this gear icon. So what I'm going to do here is to start by adding my background color, and this is going to be white. Next, I am going to add some box shadows. So I'm going to click here on design, box shadow. The option I'm going to go with is this one here. And now it's time to customize our settings. So I'm going to start with the box shadow horizontal position and set this to 80 pixels. Next, on the blur strength, set this to 75. And then the shadow color, we're going to click here on this eyedropper tool and just paste my color in here. Next, we're going to go to the transform scale. So I'm going to click here on transform, and we're going to set this to 75%. And while we're here, we might as well set our sizes for our tablets and smartphones. So I'm going to click on this little icon, click on tablet, and here this needs to be 100%, and that needs to be the same with the phone as well. All right, so back on the desktop tab, we are now going to go to transform translate. So I'm going to select it. Now for this, I'm going to add different values to these two sides. So I'm going to break the chain. And then on the bottom here, I'm going to set this to -5 VW. On the right, this should remain as 0. And then we're going to go back over here by clicking this little arrow to go to my column structure. So here we need to make some changes to column 2. So I'm going to click here on this gear icon. And now that I'm in column 2, I'm going to start with the spacing. So I'm going to go to design, spacing, and I'm going to set my padding left and right to 2 VW, activate the chain. So later in this tutorial, we'll add a smooth scroll to hide the scroll bar. And in order to do that, we need to add some custom CSS to the column. So I'm going to come over here to my advanced tab, click on CSS ID and classes. And on the CSS class, we're going to add a class called scroll column. Next, on the visibility settings, we are going to set our horizontal overflow to hidden and our vertical overflow to scroll. Now it's time to start adding all our modules. So I'm going to save here and then save one more time. So over here in column 1, we are going to add our menu item. So I'm going to click on this plus button, search for my text module. I'm going to select it, and the text we need here just needs to say home. Next, on the link here, this is where we need to add our anchor link. So I'm just going to paste this. Now, this is very important. So here, you need to make sure that this part which says your website needs to be your actual website. Okay, so I'm going to just copy my URL here and paste it and replace where it says your website. And where it says your page, this needs to be your actual page. And then hashtag home. Now let's go and do our text settings. So I'm going to click here on design, text. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to start by changing my font to Montserrat. Text alignment, we're going to center it. So I'm just going to scroll down here and center this text. Next, we are going to set our color and also the size. So the color of this text is going to be, in fact, we need to click here on this eyedropper tool, and I'm just going to paste it in here. So that's a really dark gray. And then the text size is going to be 3VW. Next, we're going to come over here to our letter spacing, and I'm going to set this to -3 pixels. Now, as you can see, our title here is way too close to the edge on the top. So we need to fix that by adding a top margin and bottom margin. So I'm going to come over here and choose spacing. So let's start with the top margin. I'm going to set this to 23VW. Bottom margin is going to be 3VW. Right, so what we need to do next is to clone this menu twice. So I'm going to save this, and then I'm just going to clone this twice. Now we need to change the contents of these items that we've cloned. So I'm going to go in here and change this from home to services. Save that, move on to this other one, and this one here is going to be about. Save that. So now we need to change the links in order for this to work. So I'm going to go back in here into services, and for the link, we're going to come over here. Now you can see here it's set to home. We need to change this to services. Save that, go into the about, and do the same. Now, as you can see, these are way far apart. So we need to go back in and set our margins. So I'm going to go into the first one here, which is the services. Click on design, spacing. So here we need to set this to 3VW and 3VW to the bottom. I'm going to save that. We're going to do the same to the about. Click on design, spacing, set this to 3VW, and then save. Now the next thing we're going to do, in fact, if you want to drag these around, you can just drag them and have them in that order. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add a divider. So I'm going to click this plus button here, search for my divider module and select it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to start by adding my line color. So I'm going to click here on design, line, click here on this eyedropper tool and paste my color in here. Next, we need to set our divider weight. So I'm going to click on sizing. So for the divider weight, I'm going to set this to 1VW and the height to 0, and then save. Next, we're going to clone this and drag it into position. Now it's time to add some social follow icons. So I'm going to click on this plus button and search for social and set my social follow icons. So over here, you can actually add even more. So let's say you want to add, say Instagram. You can just add it by doing that. Click here on this back arrow, add another one. And this time this could be maybe YouTube. So this is how you can go in and set them. Next, and this is very important, you want to make sure you come over here and add your URL. So in this case, I'm not going to add any URLs now. Now let's head over to the alignment. So I'm just going to go back over here, click on design, alignment, and make sure this is centered. I'm also going to come over here to my spacing and set my top margin to 12VW and bottom margin to 3VW. So what we could do here is, if you're not happy with this design, you can actually make these circular by coming over here to border and setting your rounded corners to 50VW. So now notice now these are now in circles. So let's go ahead and save. And then now let's go into column 2 and add an image. So I'm going to search for my image module here, select it and click here and choose my image. So the image I'm going to add for this is this one right here. And notice the size is 800 by 510 pixels. So you can choose any image that you want as long as you have dimensions similar to this. Click upload an image. Next, you're going to come over here to design, alignment, make sure this is aligned to the left. And then over here on the sizing, we want to force full width. And now let's add some spacing. So we are going to add 20VW to the right padding. And the last thing we're going to do here is to go to the advanced tab and add the first CSS ID to make sure it all matches with our menu links, items, anchor link. All right, so I'm going to come over here to the advanced, click on CSS ID and classes and set our ID to home. So we're going to save this, and then over here we're going to add a text title. So I'm going to search for my text module, select it, and just replace all this with my title. And what I'm going to do now is to set this to heading 2. And now let's go to our settings and customize this text. So I'm going to click here on design, heading text, click on heading 2. We're going to change this from default to Montserrat, and then we're going to set our alignment to left. And then we also need to change our color here to a dark gray. So I'm going to click here on this eyedropper tool, paste my color in here. Now it's time to set my size. So I'm going to set my heading text size to 2VW and letter spacing to 1 pixel. Now the next thing we need to do is to give this title some breathing space by adding some margins. So I'm going to come over here to spacing, and my top margin here is going to be 6VW, and then my bottom padding, or my bottom margin, is going to be 2VW, and then save. Next, we're going to add a divider module by clicking here on this plus button. So I'm going to search for it and select it. Make sure show divider is set to yes, and let's start by adding our line color. So I'm going to click here on design line, click on the eyedropper tool and paste your values in here like that. Now, if you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using throughout this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is to go to the sizing. So I'm going to come over here. So for our divider weight, I'm going to set this to 15 pixels, our width to 16 pixels, because we don't want the line to go all the way across. So let's set our custom width here. Now the module alignment needs to be aligned to the left as well. Now we can add some body text. So I'm going to save this and click on this plus button, search for my text module and select it. And now we can add all our text that we need for that module. So now that we have our text, let's stylize it by coming over here to design text. We are going to change our font from default to Roboto. So I'm going to select my font here. Our text alignment, I'm going to set it to justify, and my size is going to be 1VW. And for my letter spacing, I'm going to set this to 1 pixel. Now the next thing we're going to do here is to set our text color. So I'm going to paste my color in here, and let's add our line height, and here we're going to set it to 2VW. Now let's head over to spacing. So here we need to add some margins. So I'm going to start with my top and bottom margin. So I'm going to set this to 3VW and a right margin of 20VW. Next, we're going to add a button to column 2. So I'm going to save this, click on this plus button and search for, in fact, my button module is right here. So I'm going to select it. So the title of the button can be whatever you want. So I'm just going to call this read more, and don't forget to add your button URL link over here. So I'm just going to add a blank link for now. And also the alignment needs to be left. So I'm going to come over here, choose my alignment, make sure it's aligned to the left. Now let's go ahead and stylize our button. So to do that, we need to come over here to button and activate use custom styles for button. And let's start by adding our button text size. And this is going to be 1VW. Our button text color is going to be white. Now let's add our button background color by clicking here on this plus button and pasting the value in here. So for our border width, we're going to set this to 0. Border radius, we're going to set this to 0 as well. And our button font needs to be Montserrat. So I'm going to select it here. And we are going to set this to semi-bold. Now let's head over to spacing. So here on spacing, we're going to just add some margins and some padding just to give this button some breathing space. So I'm going to start here with my top margin and set this to 4VW, and that's going to be the same for the bottom as well. Then for the padding, I'm going to set my top padding to 1.5VW, and that's going to be the same with the bottom as well. Now let's add left and right padding, and this is going to be 3VW, and that's how our button is going to look like. So now that we have all the content that we need for our homepage, the next stage now is to clone all these modules in the same order. So what I find easier is to come over here, click on expand settings, click on wireframe view, and this is where we can clone them, but we need to do this twice in the same order. So go ahead and clone these. So this is what it needs to look like. In fact, let me switch over here to my desktop mode. So this is the order. So now you need to go into the images and set our CSS ID. So I've done the first one already. So the next one here, I'm going to go into my settings, click on advanced CSS ID and classes. So notice it's set to home. So this one here needs to be set to about. I'm going to save that and then do the same to the services. Now let's open our page settings and add our CSS code. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to my settings icon, click on advanced, custom CSS, and paste this CSS code. So if you want to add the exact same CSS code, it's going to be on the post, which I'll link to in the show notes below. So I'm going to save this and we're going to do a quick preview. So I'm going to publish this page, exit the Visual Builder. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.